Welcome to Andy and Ari On3, presented by Wendy's. Yeah, we got an emergency show. We didn't think we were coming on tonight, but Boston College and Florida State had other ideas. Another Labor Day, another emergency show. Ari Wasserman. Florida State is now 0-2 in the ACC. They're effectively out of the conference race. Are they the first team eliminated from the college football playoff race after week 1? You're muted, Ari.
I cannot believe what we just saw, Andy. I just cannot believe it. And I thought, I told my wife, we're going to have a nice little Sunday, evening. We're going to watch, The Bachelor catch up before the finale tomorrow. And here we are. But this is just so deep. And I think it's much deeper than DJU. I know that everybody wants to talk about DJU and how he's playing poorly and isn't living up to his 5-star name. But I do think that we have a 50-minute philosophical discussion about what went wrong with Florida State and what this means for college football. We might save that for our show on Tuesday morning, but this was an incredible lesson, I think, for roster building for the rest of the country.
Well, and the thing is, yes, it's a situation where Jordan Travis is gone. They have clearly not been anywhere near as good without Jordan Travis, but they got bullied up front again. 5 yards of carry for Boston College. They just grinded out the game. They capitalized on a couple mistakes, but it really was Boston College bullying Florida State up front the same way Georgia Tech bullied Florida State up front. And these guys, we've seen them play in the past. They've played well in their various situations before. Some of them are transfers. Some of them guys that Florida State recruited out of high school. But that line is just getting pounded. And Florida State clearly doesn't have anything better because they haven't been able to replace him.
Yeah, and I do think that the DJU criticism is warranted. Some of those missed passes that he had, specifically in the red zone at the end of the second quarter, it's you have to make that throw. You have to make that throw. But I don't, and I actually think I would go as far to say that Florida State would have won the game had they gotten elite level or top level or even average level quarterback play. So I'm not trying to diminish the importance of the quarterback position or the decision that Mike Norvell made in bringing him in and putting the trust they did into him to kind of help this program transition from what was a really tough ending to the previous season. That said, who is their number one receiver that they can count on to go make a play? Who are their defensive linemen that are going to get a stop? I was absolutely appalled, even more appalled than the performance from DJU by how easily and how without reckless abandon that BC was running it through the teeth of the defense in the second half in a one-possession game. Why is that happening?
I don't know, but I do know that we got to find at 321 Knoll tonight. So we talked about this in the mailbag show last week. Producer River, do we have the tweet? We will have the tweet in a second. I will preface this by saying at 321 Knoll has since deleted his account. This account was up last week when this got posted. Producer River is efforting the tweet, but I can just tell you what it says.
Here we go.
This is what this person said. If Florida State loses to BC this weekend, I will eat dog poop out of a red Solo cup with a spoon and post video of me doing it. Book it. Find this man, internet. I know Jack Mack from Barstool has already found his Snapchat and basically said he's going to put a curse on Florida State if 321 Knoll does not come through on the bet. One boy, one cup, one disastrous football season.
Yeah, that's a person who's down bad. He should be having a belly full of white dog crap right now. I just don't know where he is. I don't know what he's doing and why he deleted his account. But let me tell you this, Andy. We're only 48 hours into working together here at On3. He has an open invitation to come onto our show at any point in time.
Live.
Discuss, how he's doing live. And then, anybody who's followed the show over the years knows that when you make a bet on this show, you pay it off. And let me tell you guys, I had to eat that death chip. And Andy was nice enough to help me delay it a few weeks because I got COVID during when it was really scary to get COVID right at the beginning, right when I was supposed to eat it. Andy cut me some slack and said, you know what, why don't you recover, get better from that? Then you could eat the chip. I was hoping 2 weeks would go by. He would forget about it. And the first thing right when I got back to work, when are you eating that chip? You pay your debts. When you bet, You pay your debts. Trust me, I've been down bad.
A Lannister pays his debts. Ari doesn't know what that means because he doesn't like fantasy, sci-fi, or anything else fun. But yes, you did pay off that bet. This is the one chip challenge where they give you a glove to wear with the chip because you're not supposed to let any part of the powder that's on the chip touch any part of your body. And of course, Ari eats the chip as he's basically dying, rubs his eye with the glove. I have never yelped at such a high pitch on any sort of live broadcast, radio, television, internet, you name it, more than I did that time. It was, I think only dogs could hear it because I thought Ari had blinded himself live on the internet.
And you're a good person because you would have felt bad about that. The most hilarious thing about it was that I was wearing gloves to prevent it, and then I touched my eye with it. Luckily, it didn't hurt, and it didn't get into my eye. But I will say that the following day was worse than experiencing the chip. But let me ask you here, Andy.
Wait. So 3, 2, 1. Noel might have to eat something like that, is what you're saying.
I mean,
if a dog had eaten a one-chip challenge beforehand.
Yes. We went to the Lexus dealership to trade my wife's lease in.
It
hit me there. It was an IS. Okay, let's not get too excited. It was the Corolla version, but it hit me at the dealership, and it was the worst hour of my life. And then it continued on for much longer into the day. Because let me tell you, when you drink a gallon of milk basically in the shower under cold water to try to get past it, the next day is a rough day. Andy, let's get back to Florida State though here. Obviously last year was difficult, but when you look at the beginning of the year, and both of us, I think we're guilty of this, maybe one more than the other.
I was very guilty of overhyping Florida State this year. I hand up,
and I'm not mocking you here. I'm just going to ask you.
Mock away,
buddy to buddy.
It's bad.
What was the calculus there of ACC championship potential to you in your mind?
I thought the D line would be better. I thought the O-line would be about as good because it's a lot of the same guys. I thought DJU would be fine because I know we're all acting like DJU has been this bad the entire time. I disagree. I don't think he was this bad at Clemson, and he definitely wasn't this bad at Oregon State. Now, maybe this gives me hope for the future at Michigan State because Jonathan Smith clearly worked a miracle last year, but I didn't expect him to be this bad. And we got a question from William. In the NFL and other pro sports, we often see the coach stick with a starter/veteran too long because of the contract/salary. Is Norvell doing the same thing with DJU because of NIL, or is he just stubborn? That is a great question. We don't know the answer to that. It may be he feels like if he goes away from him too early, he loses him forever. He might just leave. I don't know, because I would have gone to Brock Glenn in the first half. Or maybe Mike Norvell doesn't have any faith in Brock Glenn. I don't know the answer to that. Mike Norvell's going to have to answer those questions this week because I think he's going to have to make a decision here because what you just saw is going to be awful for Florida State down the stretch. I spent the day in my basement in rural Central Florida writing about the Gators. The Gators are sitting there going, wow, there might be a game we can win. Look at Florida State's schedule. Florida State plays Memphis this weekend. If they play the way they played tonight, they're going to lose to Memphis too. They might lose to Cal. They might lose to SMU. They will lose to Clemson. They have to figure this out. This could get much worse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much worse it can get. This is pretty much rock bottom. I know that more losses pile up, but when you have to stomach what just happened here, losing to BC, and not just losing to them, but I feel like kind of getting your butt kicked a little bit there, especially in the second half, is just a tough pill to swallow. I just, in terms of where to go from here, you fight hard and do your best, but I think that my response to this would be, Florida's a really nice state filled with a lot of really good high school players. Get to work. You know what I mean? This is my takeaway from this. I think that, we will discuss this very much on the show on Tuesday morning when we get back together. But I do have to say, I posted a column on On3 as the game ended tonight about roster building and how over reliance or a lot of reliance on the portal is a hard thing to sustain. This is a really new era of college football right now, Andy, where we don't know with these new ways to fill out your roster that are much different and more unique, how the most effective way to build a year-over-year sustainable success is. But I think that I'm fairly certain that it's still get the best recruiting class that you possibly can, own your home state as best as you can, and supplement through the portal with pieces that can, help accentuate what you already have on your roster. Relying it year over year could give you what the 2023 season was, which was a team that in most years or every other year would have made the playoff, potentially, had a chance to win it all. I still think that Florida State could have won the national championship last year had Jordan Travis not ever gotten injured. But that said, the cost for that, Andy, is seasons like this, because you're not going to get Keon Coleman, Trey Benson, and Johnny Wilson and Jared Verse in the portal. Even if they're in your program for multiple years, year over year, when you lose those guys, you're going to have really bad years. And I think that's what Florida State's in for right now.
Yeah. Consistency comes from great high school recruiting year over year over year. That's why Georgia reloads. That's why Alabama reloads. That's why Ohio State reloads. They can bring in people from the portal to fill holes, to fill gaps, but they don't rely on that. And Florida State has been too reliant on it. Ole Miss, we're going to find out if they've been too reliant, because if it works, it works. Now, one thing I will say about Florida State is they had some guys that transferred there that stayed there for a long time. Like Jordan Travis was a transfer, but he transferred when Willie Taggart was still the coach. Mm-hmm. So Mike Norvell inherited him. They had guys that played there for a while after. Jared Verse stayed for year 2 at Florida State. So it wasn't just 1-year rentals. Keon Coleman and Braden Fisk were 1-year rentals, and those are great. Like, those are the kind of 1-year rentals you want when you have a really good infrastructure already. So you can't just rely on that. But man, it is,
Andy, here wild. Too, we're talking about a person who was up for the Alabama job in Mike Norvell. I think he's done a pretty good job with what he took over. That said, Nick Saban is no longer the coach at Alabama anymore. And I think the reason why you've seen Miami, Florida State, and Florida all have downturns at the same exact time is because Alabama and other teams in the SEC, but mostly Alabama, had such an incredible run of taking the best players in Florida out of the state. I mean, now is the time where Florida State, coming off of a year where they went undefeated in the regular season, could have made the play. This is when you really ramp it up. Like I thought that the portal was a necessity to flip the roster at the beginning, but the plan was always to use the success on the field from that portal flip to then go into high school hallways and sell it. Like the fact that he has only had one top 15 class in his 4 years there. I think 3 of the 4 were outside of the top 20 and none in the top 10 is astounding to me, considering the fact that Florida State is a blue blood in a state that is now there for the taking. Like, this is the time and the reminder that you need that being a transactional program could have its highs, but it really can't have its lows. It's not without cost. And I think we're going to find out with Washington, and we're going to find out with Michigan and other teams, maybe not Michigan. They've got a lot of really good players, but teams that have gotten a lot of important portal pieces that lose those pieces can't reload. And the thing that you're saying about the fact that these guys were in the program for multiple years is absolutely true. In order to achieve the success they did last year, they did develop Jared Verse. He had one of the coolest stories in terms of path to success of anybody we've seen in the last 5-10 years. Jordan Travis was a guy who showed up during the Willie Taggart era, stuck around, developed. They did a very good job with the guys who stayed. But when all of them are leaving at the same time, if you're not recruiting at a high level, you cannot replace them all in 1 year. Like, eventually you're going to have a huge drop off. And when you do it that way, they all have to be really good at the same time to achieve the type of success that Florida State had last year. And they weren't able to win the national championship. I do think that they got screwed in the committee, but that's a discussion for another day. You lose those guys. how do you replace them if you don't have a bunch of really, really good high school players who are on your roster, hungry, developed, and ready to go?
Well, Bill O'Brien didn't get recruiting these guys. He also didn't really get to use the portal because of when he got hired. Remember, Jeff Hafley went to the Packers as the defensive coordinator much later than most of the coaching carousel happened. It had all mostly happened. Bill O'Brien was going to be the OC at Ohio State. He gets the BC head coaching job. He missed the entire winter portal. But as Chris points out in the chat, BC has 3 former NFL head coaches on their staff, all former Belichick assistants. They played like a very well-coached team. FSU played like an undisciplined nightmare, and that's true. Shout out to Tim Lewis's defense, which held Florida State to 21 rushing yards on 16 carries. 21. Meanwhile, Boston College ran it 52 times for 263 yards. Like, Thomas Castellanos didn't have a great game throwing the ball. He had an efficient game throwing the ball, 10 of 16, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. But the man can run the ball, 14 carries for 73 yards and a TD. And then Trayshawn Ward, former Seminole, with 12 carries for 77 yards. Like, Boston College's O-line was just beating the snot out of Florida State's D-line.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the part of the game that I think was the most offensive. I mean, I was watching that in the second half, and, you know, you get within that one touchdown pass that DJU threw, nice broken tackle into the end zone. I think it was a 29-yard strike to get within 8 points there. They're in the middle of the third quarter. You think, okay, Florida State's going to figure it out. They're going to get it. And then on the very next play, BC marched down the entire field on the very next drive, not play, sorry. And I think they ran the same play or a variation of that play, 5 or 6 times, and they were getting 5, 6, 7, 8 yards of pop on that. And it's just unbelievable that could happen in 2024, the year of our Lord.
Boston College, you look at the schedule. Duquesne, then they got to go to Missouri. That's going to be a fun one because, you looked at that early on and you're like, okay, Missouri scheduled a power conference opponent, but don't know exactly how good they're going to be. This team should be kind of fun against Missouri. We'll see. I mean, I trust Brady Cook and Luther Burden a lot more than I trust these guys. Steven in the chat, FSU and UF are going after Coach Prime this season, especially if Coach Prime wins at least 6 games and gets Colorado to a bowl game this year. I don't think so. But how much fun would that be? If you had 2 in-state rivals fighting over Coach Prime, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, is that what people think is going to happen? Because we can start a 25-minute rant right now about how Deion Sanders is not living up to his potential as Colorado's coach right now. But I don't know if people want that from me.
All right, can we save that for the Colorado-Nebraska game? We have a Saturday night show, for God's sake. Come on, pace yourself. You've been working here less than 48 hours. You've been working for this company for 47 hours and 18 minutes. Pace yourself. You've written like 17 columns.
I'm fired up.
You've done like 90 shows already. So
I had 6 weeks of load management, Andy. I'm ready to ride.
So better start to the new gig. You or Bill O'Brien?
Probably Bill O'Brien. I mean, let's go. The guy's going to, have a really, really good evening tonight. And I bet he's going to have a great meal. I'm going to go to bed hungry because we had some healthy turkey meal tonight. So, hey, I think we're doing okay. We have a really, really big show in the morning. We have a really, really big 10 days together coming up. I hope this is just the beginning of what is going to be a lot of good content, and super excited to be able to be on the show still. So still riding high on that.
We'll see you guys at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Tuesday morning. We have a lot to talk about. We'll talk about what Mike Norvell said after this game. We'll talk about what Billy Napier said in Gainesville about people in their basements. We'll talk about people who aren't in the state of Florida. All happens